So I want to thank you all for inviting me back to talk about All Aboard Florida. Yes, we had the vote on August 5th at the FDFC bond hearing, and we're going to talk about that, but I want you to know All Aboard Florida is still not a done deal. Today I'm going to be videotaping this presentation. It'll be available on the internet after today through our YouTube, Florida Not All Aboard YouTube link, so please share the presentation if you found it helpful to your friends and your neighbors, and also if you have any questions or comments, please hold them off until the end of the presentation if you would. So I'll start out with the FDFC bond hearing. Yes, they approved the bonds. Are you shocked? Don't be. The FDFC isn't exactly a disinterested party. Their budget already showed it'll reach $1.8 million in fees for approving these private activity bonds. None of us were surprised. We were very disappointed, but none of us were surprised that they approved these bonds. Yes, I was at the hearing. I was there till after 9 o'clock at night. Many people came there to speak against the private activity bonds and them being a conduit issuer. But folks, the good news is, it really wasn't that big of a deal. All this did is give tax-exempt status to these bonds. All Aboard Florida can sell bonds any day of the week. They could have sold them 2 years ago. As a matter of fact, they sold them last summer already. The only thing this vote did was give them tax-exempt status. The battle is still on, and it's just beginning. I want to let you know, besides many citizens that came there that day, we've had a ton of our elected officials that show up, and I wanted to make sure that they're pointed out because they stood there and they spoke on behalf of all their constituents against the private activity bonds. Rebecca Negron also came up to the FDFC hearing. She's not an elected official yet, but she was there representing her future constituents possibly. I want to make sure that everybody thanks our commissioners and our elected officials. Right now, there's kind of a campaign going on that wants the people to believe it's a waste of taxpayer money to fight All Aboard Florida, to ensue in these legal battles. It is not. If you go to my website, FloridaNotAllAboard.com, there's a letter there that you can send out to all the Treasure Coast County Commissioners encouraging them to continue the fight. Folks, this is very important because this campaign is trying to stop our county commissioners from funding the legal battle even further. We need them to keep supporting the constituents, keep supporting the residents, and they need to hear from us. So if you want to know what you can do, go to that website, send a thank you letter, encourage them to continue the battle. I wanted to show you this particular graphic. It's out of the packet from this hearing on August 5th. This is Fortress Investment Group. As you all heard from my previous presentation, they're the ones ultimately behind All Aboard Florida. They own Florida East Coast Railway, Florida East Coast Industries, All Aboard Florida, all of these LLCs. What's important here, the FDFC, tax-exempt bonds, is one of several sources of funding. This is key because the FDFC approved being a conduit issuer. This isn't the only source of funding All Aboard Florida is counting on, and that's what we need to keep our eye on. I've always started from the very beginning of this fight that All Aboard Florida is a private company. They should get private funding to keep our government out of it. I am concerned. The RIF loan is still on the table, and I don't know what else they could be trying to obtain as well. But we all need to keep our eye on the ball on this, and this is why. The FDFC hearing, they said this isn't the only source of funding. There is something else going on. Mike Mayo of the Sun Sentinel has an excellent article about these private activity bonds. I encourage you all to read it. Again, FloridaNotAllAboard.com. We have it posted on the website. He has a great question. But the bigger question is this. If All Aboard Florida is such a good idea and has reasonable chance of success, why is it falling on junk bond investors to back them instead of All Aboard Florida's deep-pocketed corporate parent, Fortress Investment Group? We're going to go into that today. That's exactly a good question, and we're going to answer that. First, I want to give you a little history. I don't know if any of you are aware, but Florida East Coast Railway tried to get in on the funds. This is the grant, High-Speed Intercity Passenger Program. This is the funds that Governor Scott turned back that went from Tampa to Orlando. Before that, Florida East Coast Railway tried to partner up with Amtrak to improve their lines from Miami to Jacksonville. That fell through. I don't know why, it fell through. So it's interesting then, that was in 2010. We move on to 2012, that's when they created the All Aboard Florida Passenger Rail Scheme, and then they applied for the taxpayer-backed $1.5 billion RIF loan. As you can see, it was the All Aboard Florida Passenger Rail Project, and that RIF loan was the first thing we focused on when they started Florida Not All Aboard. Last fall, it's very interesting, that is when All Aboard Florida got permission from the Federal Department of Transportation to issue the private activity bonds. What I find interesting is if you go to the Federal Railroad Administration website, the name of the project changed to an inner-city passenger rail project. This is why I say we need to keep our eye on the ball, because that first grant was an inner-city project. Now they've changed the name to inner-city project. These bonds are going to be so tough for them to sell. We need to watch how they're trying to get funding through the government. Mike Neal is absolutely right. I keep pointing to him because he hit this spot on. Now, the easy part was getting approval from the FDFC board on being a conduit issuer for these private activity bonds. What's going to be tough now is finding buyers for these junk bonds. All Aboard Florida knows this. Do you know in a RIF loan application, this is early in March 2013, they said due to the project status as a new development and the required construction period and operational ramp-up, traditional debt financing in the capital markets is not feasible. Traditional debt financing in the capital markets is not feasible. All Aboard Florida stated that. This is their executive summary. Now they think that they're going to find investors to buy these bonds just because they're tax exempt. But hold on, there's much more. We need to look a little bit about Fortress Investment Group. Everybody thinks it's this big, powerful hedge fund. I pulled up a couple stock charts for you. The first is from 2007 to current. You'll notice a distinct pattern here. Stock goes down. The second chart is this year's, another very distinct pattern. Stock prices are falling for Fortress. Last November, the ticker report, Fortress Investment Group is at a new 12-month low, $6.01. It's floating around there now. Then in January, Fortress loses in a torrid week for macro funds after the Swiss franc removed the cap. The Swiss bank removed the cap on the franc. Then in March of this year, Active Finance, Fortress Investment Group lost a quarter of its assets. Investors took back nearly $800 million, which is 25% of the firm's total assets. That was in the first quarter this year. In May, Bloomberg reported Fortress first quarter profit fell 43%. You know, no wonder they're trying to get taxpayer-backed loans, isn't it? They're losing money. Then in July, Bloomberg again reported Fortress lost 20% amid a macro turmoil. Things are not going well for Fortress. Back in April, Bloomberg reported debt of All Aboard Florida, owned by Fortress, has lost more than 7% of its value since it was issued in kind June 2014. This debt, and as I said earlier, they can sell bonds any day of the week. They sold $405 million worth of bonds last summer. $405 million worth of bonds. Guess what? It's sitting in escrow. They haven't spent it. You see, they attached collateral to these bonds. If they don't pay them back, they attach a lien on the land, rights to run the passenger track, and other collateral. Huge collateral. They don't pay these bonds back, they lose that collateral. So they're sitting there with this money in escrow. They're afraid to spend it. And they're accruing debt because it does have interest. It's junk bond again, 12.75%. The company's been paying interest in kind, racking up even more debt. The Florida train is part of a quest in the U.S. to revive 19th century motor transportation, even as Amtrak, the national passenger railroad, loses money. Investors said the $3 billion project may struggle enough to even pay its debt. Mind you, there are no profitable passenger rail lines in North America. But yet this hedge fund in New York City wants investors to believe they've created the magic formula to create the first profitable passenger rail line in almost 100 years. When All Aboard Florida sold that $405 million in bonds, it paid 12%. The price tumbled to a record low of 93.5 cents by April 1 of this year, a level typically associated with distressed securities. Mind you, they are looking for investors to invest in this project, and from their bonds last year, it's already at levels typically associated with distressed securities. In April, they also interviewed a couple investment managers. This first one is Dan Heckman. He manages $126 billion. That's almost double what Fortress manages. He said this is a very high-risk project. I would question whether they would get the kind of ridership they may need to quickly enough make it work. Another manager, she said, I can't recommend it. The fact that they're trying to offload their risk on investors is very telling. This isn't something I would recommend to my clients. Now mind you, they want us all to believe with these private activity bonds that they're just going to run out and sell them because they're tax exempt. You know what? That tax exempt status only matters if they make a profit. If they don't, who cares if it's tax exempt? There was no income earned. The next pages are very interesting. You can find the entire report on my website, FloridaNotAllAboard.com. This came out of the All Aboard Florida Preliminary Limited Offering Memorandum at the FDFC bond hearing. There are 25 pages of risk related to this company's business. I didn't point out all 25 because we would be here till late in the evening. I just pointed out some of them so you realize this is not a done deal. It is still not a done deal. The market data the company has relied upon may be inaccurate or incomplete and is subject to change, which could change the company's business plan or financial performance. However, the company has not independently verified any such information. We're talking about their ridership, their projected revenues. None of this has been verified. Another risk. The company may not be able to obtain or maintain required permits, consents, approvals, licenses, and entitlements. Wait a minute, this done deal, they don't have all their permits yet, and they want investors to invest in it. The company currently has no revenues or cash flow and has never constructed or managed a passenger railroad. I've talked with financial experts who give out loans on these kinds of deals. You know what they ask? Who are these guys? Fortress Investment Group. They've hired some people from Disney and other people to run this project. Have they ran a railroad, passenger railroad before? Nope. Have you borrowed this kind of money before and paid it back? Well, we borrowed $400 million last year and we can't pay it back. We're hoping the investors will purchase these bonds so we can pay that one back. Have you ever constructed anything like this before? Nope. They want investors to invest in something that they have never even done before. This is why this is a tough sale for them. Bond investors are not foolish. This is what they do for a living. If they invest money poorly, they lose their job. Another risk, the company may not be successful in implementing its proposed business strategy. I'm counting on that one. Shared use of the company's corridor with Tri-Rail could have an adverse effect on the company's ability to utilize the company's railway efficiently. This is important, and I brought this up because of this intercity title that has started back up. For years, Tri-Rail wanted to become part of FEC, and FEC was not interested in combining. They are now. They're interested in putting Tri-Rail on their FEC tracks. I don't know why. My guess is FEC is government funded. The taxpayers backed, or I'm sorry, not FEC, Tri-Rail is a taxpayer-backed train project as well. So if they put that on the FEC line, guess what? Now all of a sudden you have a line into government money funds to help support your rail line. So just keep that in mind. Another risk, the company's ability to complete construction of the project will be contingent on its ability to obtain certain land rights from Cocoa to Orlando. Folks, they keep telling us it's a done deal, but they don't even have all the land rights between Cocoa and Orlando yet. All aboard Florida is still not a done deal. Despite the company's substantial indebtedness level, the company and company subsidiaries will still be able to incur significant additional amounts of debt. So investors, we have a lot of debt. We know it, and we're going to incur more. But please invest in us. We haven't done this before. We haven't ran a passenger rail line. Shared use of the company's corridor with freight operations should have an adverse effect on the company's ability to utilize the company's railway efficiently, which could impact the company's operations. Of course, we have freight trains that are going up to 79 miles per hour, combined with passenger trains that are going 125, up to 125 miles per hour, all traversing the same corridor. It is all double track with the exception of our bridge here in Stewart. That's going to remain single track. So what a choke point that's going to be as you have over 50 trains, freight and passengers, going north and south every day. What's more is there's over 340 grade intersections, like right out here in front of this restaurant. Cars go over, kids cross the tracks. This is not a tunnel or a bridge. The trains will impede us. Do you realize with over 50 trains and 340 intersections, that's over 17,000 times per day for an opportunity for an accident at one of those intersections. 17,000 times a day. And they want investors to believe that this train company is going to run smoothly north and south, and these passenger trains will be on time, and the freight will never have an accident. This is another good one, another risk. If the company is unable to retain the services of key managers for the project, the company's business might be harmed. I don't know if any of you remember Don Robinson. He was the president and COO of All Aboard Florida. Well, guess what? He's a smart man. He left last January. The company is not providing all of the information that would be required if this offering were being registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. These bonds are not going to be registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Typical of All Aboard Florida. They haven't been transparent from the start, and they're not going to be with their bonds either. Again, you have to realize investors have a lot of projects they can invest in. Why risk this one? The company does not currently have any revenue and may not be able to generate sufficient cash to service the bonds or the company's other indebtedness, and may be forced to take other actions to satisfy the company obligations under company indebtedness, which may not be successful. No revenue, and they want you to invest in this. The company faces possible catastrophic loss and liability, and the company's insurance may not be sufficient to cover the company's damages or liability to others. This is a very similar project to the freight trains. We don't know what they're carrying, how dangerous it is. There was an accident up in Canada, the Magmatech. Over 40 people perished. The town was destroyed. That train company went bankrupt because their insurance was only $25 million. The losses were far greater than that. But Fortress came in and did scoop that up in bankruptcy, by the way. Oh, investors, in the event of bankruptcy of the company, holders of the bonds may be deemed to have an unsecured claim to the extent of the company's obligations in respect to the series bonds, the value of the collateral securing the bonds, in which case owners will not be entitled to post-petition interest. Investors, we're probably going to go bankrupt. This again is another risk, folks, and this is why this is far from a done deal. Who is going to invest in this with these types of risks? The value of the collateral securing those bonds may not sufficiently satisfy the company's obligations to the bonds. So yes, you can buy the bonds, but collateral probably isn't going to cover it. This is another good one. Federal and state fraudulent transfer laws may permit a court to void the bonds. Subordinate claims in respect to the bonds and or require owners of the bonds to return payments received. And if that occurs, owners of the bonds may not receive any payments on the bonds. How could any intelligent investor really put their money in this high-risk project? This is why it's far from a done deal. There are so many issues to talk about with this train, and today I strictly focused on the economics. Because frankly, if they don't get funded, all the other problems go away because this train doesn't come down the track. And I focused on the economics today because of these bonds. Everybody thought it was a done deal. The paper said, what now? All Aboard Florida's got to prove the FDFC. What now? You've got to find people that are going to purchase $1.75 billion worth of these high-risk, unrated junk bonds. Where do the Treasure Coast counties stand? I've spoken with commissioners in all the counties, and they've assured me they are full bore ahead. This is why they need to hear from you, though, for continued support, that you want them to be full bore ahead. Right now, each of our counties is meticulously studying that final environmental impact statement that was coincidentally released the night before the FDFC bond hearing. What a shock that was. And they will address the most egregious issues. CARE Florida, Citizens Against Rail Expansion, is also studying the FIAS, and they previously stated they will also initiate legal action on issues that were not covered or taken care of, which basically, in the FIAS, nothing was taken care of. They approved it. So there's going to be a lot of issues for these groups to look at and then litigate. Currently, Martin and Indian River counties are embroiled in a lawsuit with the Federal Department of Transportation over the legality of even being a conduit issuer for these private activity bonds. This is another thing for these investors. If this court case goes our way, and it very well may, these bonds they're done. There's nothing to invest in. So again, why would an investor invest now before it's out of court? All Aboard Florida is still not a done deal. The next battle is in the courts. I'm going to ask you, besides writing the commissioners, please help donate. Again, CARE Florida. Their attorney is Steve Ryan. He's also the attorney for Martin County. CARE Florida and the counties are all working very closely together. All of the legal team between these three counties are unbelievable. They spoke at the FDFC bond hearing, and folks, I got to tell you, these attorneys are sharp, and they pointed out some good issues. This is going to be a long battle in court, but we have some really good warriors, and the legal team that our counties have, outstanding, but we need to support them. For information, again, follow us on Facebook or the website. If you sign up on the electronic petition, I share a lot of information that's very pertinent to the project through the petition. And lastly, I just want to leave you with a couple quotes to go home with. I'm only tired, I'm not slain, laying you down to rest a while, and then rise to fight again. And then Commissioner Solari has a favorite quote from Winston Churchill, never, never, never give up. This is far from a done deal, folks. Please keep supporting our elected commissioners, and again, go home, thank them, and tell them to continue the fight. Is there any questions?
How can